Hello, loved ones. It's your girl, Liv. I'm back. I'm happy to be back in the seat with you for the next installment of this series. So come on in, come sit down, come on, come and be together. So maybe you're listening to this while you are driving in your car. Maybe you're listening to this as you cook your dinner. Maybe you're just chilling on the couch. Wherever you are, thank you for being here. I hope today's episode is going to touch some places. I think that given the reception that this email got, so I sent this theme out on an email this week and it had quite the reception, and it brought up lots of questions, and it brought up quite a number of women being like, hey, I really want to work with you on this. This is a really big topic for me. It resonated. So when something resonates, I'm going to talk about it more because I want those of you that have questions to maybe have them answered today as I share a little bit more about this. So I'm going to be speaking about how do we go from subtly begging for scraps in our relationships to being a truly embodied, nourished woman. Now, this is an important topic for me because at the heart of what I do in my work with women, in my one-to-one work with women, which is how I'm currently working with you, we bring you to a place of true nourishment. It is so important as a woman to claim what real nourishment really is for you. And I want to talk a little bit about the patterns that keep us away from it and where it comes from. And then ultimately, what can you do about it? Because I think we all kind of are like, well, how the fuck do I do this differently? So hopefully today answers some of those questions for you. And if you want to talk more, you can book a one-off deep dive. It's an hour session for £111, and you can start the conversation with me about you specifically and your journey with this. So I'll talk more about that at the end, but just know that that's there, and the link's in my bio, and you can go and have a look and book in, and we can talk about you specifically and how this works for you. Okay, so begging for scraps. What do I mean when I say that? So where this comes from is over the years in my work with women, what I hear a lot is maybe you're coming out of a relationship, or maybe you've been in a pattern in a cycle and in relationship with other people, and perhaps you felt like you were getting less than you deserved, or you felt like in that relationship you were with someone that was sort of undergiving to you, and or your perception was like, and I hear this a lot, like, oh my God, I was just settling for crumbs. I was just, I'll never be with someone like that again. That person took the piss. I just gave so much and they took. And you have this real emphasis on what the other person was doing, which may or may not be true. I'm not here to say that that person wasn't undergiving and you shouldn't be with someone like that again. But when the emphasis is all on the other person and what they were doing or not doing, you give away all of your power, because there's actually very little you can do about the other person and the other people in your life. The person that can change and maybe needs to change something inside themselves is you. And that's actually where the power lies. So when it comes to breadcrumbing or begging for scraps and sort of accepting scraps, and scraps is sort of like below the bare minimum, not even the bare minimum, but like below the bare minimum, you're kind of like, really undernourished in your relationship. It can be really enticing to spend all your time sort of knocking the other person, everything they weren't doing, versus looking at everything that you could have been doing. Okay, so let me explain this. Oh, self-worth often gets tangled up into how other people behave. So, oh my God, he bought me flowers. He took me for dinner. He paid. I must be so special and amazing. Nope, not necessarily. Of course, you are a wonderful, a special, and amazing person, but that's not necessarily why somebody is behaving in a positive way towards you. Everyone comes to a relationship with their own set of standards and values. And there's a particular kind of man that's just going to buy you flowers, period. And is going to open the door for you, period. And is going to pay for dinner, period. Because that's what they value when it comes to being with a woman. And I know I'm speaking very heterosexually here. And I'm sure this translates to other kinds of dynamics. But for the purposes of speaking about it in the way that I've mostly worked with it with women, I'm going to speak about it in a heterosexual dynamic. So self-worth gets entangled in what other people can or cannot offer. So, but truthfully, like someone will offer what they want to offer, and they will do that to most people that they like, regardless if it's you or not. So we can often be like, oh, it's me, I'm getting special treatment. But actually, how somebody behaves towards you is really about who they are as the person. Most of the time, I will say. So if your self-worth is tangled up in what somebody does and offers you, it gets very, very messy. Because when you're not getting what you want, you may feel really low about your own value, right? So can you see that having your value tied to how someone else behaves is a very, very, very slippery slope. And it is very common. So if you're like, yep, that's me. Okay, how do I not do that? Right? It's very common, and it actually starts very young. We usually get told very young that our value comes from what we do and what the world gives to us, and this kind of winners and losers, and we get a lot of messaging around our value being outside of ourselves versus you're just inherently of value. You are a human being. You're inherently of value. You don't need to earn a sense of value or a sense of being a valuable, deserving human being. Deserving is another one. I deserve this. I don't deserve that. Inherently, you're deserving. Inherently, you deserve good things. How about that? How about that as a belief? I deserve beautiful things to happen in my life. I don't need to kill myself to earn them. I don't need to overgive in order to receive love, care, belonging, devotion, right? So that's often what can be happening is there's an entanglement of your value, and it's easy to slip into this, especially in intimate dynamics. Very easy. And especially in dynamics between men and women, because we have different kinds of conditioning. Women are conditioned to overgive, and men are conditioned to take. That is not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is the way that there is a difference in the way we're conditioned. And I would also say that there's a biological difference to this. Okay. And that's not necessarily something I want to get into right now, maybe on another talk. But I want to kind of name that I work mostly with women. And so this is something that a lot of women struggle with. Okay. And you may be a kind of woman that in your friendships and in your work life, you feel like you can really receive, but in intimate relationships, you can't so much. And you tend to be the overgiving type, and you tend to feel more insecure and then try and sort of earn your love. Or maybe for you, it's like across the board, but I often find sometimes it's a bit compartmentalized. You can like do it with friends and you can like receive love, and you don't have the same sort of value tied to how they show up, and you just have that romantically and it's sort of a wound, and then, or it's kind of everywhere. Like that's also what I've seen a lot in my clients. So it doesn't really matter if it's everywhere or if it's in one place. The pattern is kind of the same, and the steps out of it tend to be quite similar. Okay. So stop emphasizing on the other person and how they're behaving. It doesn't matter. Like, other people are going to behave how they behave. I'm not saying we don't influence one another, but defining, like, exiting a situation with like the kind of person you're going to choose next, and they're not going to be like that asshole from before, unhelpful. Because actually, the information that's useful is you and the way you were behaving and the way you were showing up to this. Okay. So much of this comes down to looking for external validation. So a lot of the time when we are kind of, and I'll describe this as like, why I use the language begging for crumbs is it's a subtle sort of nod to how easy it is to try and like will things and hope things and wish things into existence. And a lot of what I see when women, when you're complaining about all the things you didn't get in a relationship, I often see that you're not as open and available for those things in the way you think you are. It's a classic case of a woman being like, oh my God, he's so emotionally unavailable. But again, emphasis on the other person, the thing you can't change versus where am I actually at? I am actually at a place where I am like open in such a tiny way. I am open to love and connection and intimacy with another human being, but it's actually much smaller than I would like. And that's quite hard for me to admit. So rather than be with the fact that I'm like a little tender and I'm a little kind of, I'm more closed off maybe than I want to be, I will blame the other person for everything they didn't give me. Okay. So just let that land. Like, does that um ring true? Does it ring bells? Or you're like, oh, that actually might sounds like kind of me. And what that does is you override the work that you can actually do on your side. That's actually, I will say, your job, which is taking responsibility for your own nourishment. Okay. So an example of this is like being in a relationship with someone and wanting them to love you and think that you're great. And so you cook for them all the time and you're like cooking for them, but you really want them to say you're doing a great job. And you really want them to give you something because you did something for them. And you're sort of wanting to show them that you're really valuable and that you're really amazing. But you don't actually want to be cooking for them. You kind of want to be cooked for or taken out for dinner. And you kind of are like doing too much to get something back. And then you maybe start feeling resentful about it. Like, have you ever had this experience, right? So you're actually wanting a specific kind of nourishment and you want to receive something specific, but you're going about it, you're like giving in order to get something. And then when you don't get the thing you want, you get upset and you feel rejected or you start feeling all kinds of annoyance. But actually, you're doing something that you don't really want to be doing because you're trying to get something. You're trying to get the external validation. You're trying to get the love and you're trying to get it in these kind of sideways ways. Okay, this is really common and I am 100% guilty of this. So I do not want to say that I am past this because that definitely slips out. I think that conditioning is very strong. And when I work with this with my clients, you know, we really look at boundaries. Boundaries. Okay. In order to have boundaries, right? So that's like a kind of a way of protecting yourself. Not to say, fuck you, I don't want to contribute to the relationship I'm in, but just to say, you know what? I want to take care of myself in order to be showing up to this relationship as a whole human being. I actually need to take care of myself. I need to orbit around my own needs first. Not says forever and always, and like I'll never take care of my partner in any way, but I'm going to take care of myself first, because if I'm taken care of, then I can show up more fully, and more nourished. Okay. And then when I'm more nourished, I'm not going to be looking for external validation or all of this love I think is outside of me. I'm loving myself. And in loving myself, it allows me to open and actually soften. And so that love from another person can come in. Okay. And this is where we work on our receiving. So when we have boundaries, boundaries help us to manage our energy, manage our time, manage our money, manage our well-being, protect ourselves. They're all great things. Those are all really, really great things. And I think that if you may feel like you're constantly just giving, and then you're wanting something in return, and actually you're feeling like it feels actually very unsafe to receive. Like, do you have that experience where you're like, actually it feels kind of unsafe to receive and let nourishment in, right? Even maybe from yourself. I hear this a lot. And this often goes back to our childhood experiences. This often goes back to cultural messages where we are taught to kind of compromise and shrink. And again, I'm not saying we don't ever compromise, and I'm not saying we're not ever small, but more often than not, we have all of this shame and guilt that comes in that makes us feel unworthy of receiving true nourishment. And I will always start by saying true nourishment from yourself. True nourishment from yourself first. That is going to really help you to be able to receive nourishment from others and really, really let that in. Okay. Something I find really helpful to work with my clients on is to have you really feel and say, I have what I need. I have what I need. I am allowed to have what I need. I am allowed permission to have what you need. I'm allowed to have what I need. And even as I say that, just let it kind of permeate. Let it permeate through you. I'm allowed to have what I need. Okay, and if anyone's here listening and you're listening live, just let me know, like, how does that feel? How does that feel? This is a shift away from, I have to earn it. I have to earn love. I have to earn X. Okay. So really feeling into that. Right? What would it look like just this week to spend 15 minutes with yourself with a cup of tea? Oops, sorry. Just sitting and being with yourself for 15 minutes and slowing down and allowing yourself to have what you need and stop looking for it outside of yourself in other people's behavior. Other people giving you X, Y, and Z. I am allowed to have what I need. And if that feels a bit shaky and you're like, oh my God, I feel unsafe. I actually feel unsafe. I couldn't even imagine sitting down for 15 minutes. Sometimes that's true. You know, you might be in like such a survival place where even just sitting with yourself for 15 minutes might just feel overwhelming. Right? But can you see if it's hard for you to nourish yourself, and think about all of the things that are nourishing? This is what I get my women to do when we work together. There are so many ways as a woman we nourish ourselves and take care of ourselves, from feeding ourselves to resting, spending time with other women, uh, things that interest us, hobbies, art, creativity, nature, sensuality, exploring music. There's so many things that actually nourish us. Taking care of our finances, money, having our ducks in a row, really caring for ourselves. This is our job to do. Remember, this is how I always frame it. This is our job to do. That can feel unsafe. That can feel like I have hesitation about that. I don't know if I can do that. Okay. I have seen over and over again with my women that it is 100% possible. I have seen so many women I've worked with move from that survival, reactive, really having to hustle. My clients are such hustlers, like hustle so hard to earn love. And I'm not saying you don't hustle sometimes in your work. And I'm not saying you don't hustle if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, or whatever work that you do. We do have to hustle sometimes. We do not have to hustle to earn love. That is something else. And if you are hustling to earn love and you're doing the most just to get a little bit, that's the begging for scraps. Because if you're driven by external markers, you're going to accept pretty much anything. And you're going to find yourself in relationships and be like, why am I here again? Right? But what is it for you that feels like safer to be in a place where you're receiving just a little bit, and you get to be really angry and upset about everything you're not getting and look to the other person to change everything they're doing to fix this problem? What if the actual solution lay somewhere else? And it lay in your relationship to yourself, and it lay in your relationship to your own embodied true nourishment. And that there was something you could do about it, and you could do it right now, and it was completely available to you. That is how I see women moving away from these kinds of dynamics that may not serve you. Is you learn what true nourishment feels like. You learn how to protect yourself as a nourished woman. And then when you're in an exchange with someone, a true intimate exchange with someone, you're not exchanging to try and get something. You're relating to each other. You're receiving from one another. You're actually open and available for that kind of relationship. It's quite different. Can you feel it as I talk about it? Okay. So what I find useful is when you start making this shift, is you start thinking about your external environment. And I'm really big on ecosystems. And if you've listened to my previous episodes, you'll know that I speak about ecosystems a lot. And this is kind of having this relational, surrounding yourselves in relationships in your ecosystem with people that, if you feel like you want to be working and embodying more abundance, and a kind of sense of wholeness that is within, and it exists in your relationship to life, that it comes from you, then you want to be around environments and people and places where it's like opportunities that reflect abundance, and they reflect abundance versus that scarce, there's not enough to go around. And so it may be that once you start shifting into more abundance, and just imagine that for yourself, right? That you feel so much clearer on what you're open and available for, that when scraps are offered, you're not taking it personally, like, well, this must be all I deserve, or like, how fucking dare he offer me only a little bit. You're just like, oh, that's a no. I'm a no to that. That's like not a match for where I'm at. And you know what that no feels like, right? And because you're saying yes to nourishment, you're saying yes to being in nourishing spaces, you're saying yes to being in nourishing relationships. It's reciprocal. It's relational, right? It's dynamic and flowing, right? There's a beautiful give and take happening that's healthy. It's very different to just like taking whatever comes your way. Okay, does that make sense? Just kind of like letting that last piece land, right? Just seeing if this is like, okay. Okay. So I also find that, bringing in, the simplicity of different kinds of practices into your day. Like, how much time do you spend nourishing yourself on the daily? How much time is in the calendar for nourishing activities, and what's nourishing for you? We're all going to be different. We're all going to be different. Okay. So I want to just pose this as gradual. So these shifts happen gradually. They happen one no at a time, one yes at a time. They don't happen like, never again am I going to accept scraps. Like, sadly, that's not really how it works. Like, it can feel compelling to be like, never again. Chances are you will do it again, and that's okay. That's part of the learning. Each time you do it, you get better and better at noticing that that's what something is. And you have more and more experience of feeling the actual thing you want, which chances are is like actual nourishment. Okay. A great practice to do is to go out in nature, go on a nature walk, and just say out loud, I am receiving. I am letting this in. I am allowed to have what I need, and actually allow nature, like the experience of being in nature, to come in and love you and hold you and support you. Be in a reciprocal nature with it. Say thank you. Right? Okay. So gonna leave that there, and I want to share that the best way to work with me currently, if you're listening to this and you're like, yep, that is a yes from me. I want to dive into this more. I'm ready to commit to this journey of nourishment. I'm ready to work on my boundaries. I'm ready to step away from things that feel like a no. I'm ready to learn how to do that. Then I have two different ways of working one-to-one. One is a shorter container, one is a longer container. And the best thing to do is book a taster session. So there's a one-off deep dive taster session for 60 minutes. So we spend an hour together. And this is £111. And this is where we really look at you and the way that this is playing out for you. And then we look at what could be different, and like, what does it look like for you to stop doing this and actually start doing something else? And we vision that out. And if it feels aligned in that conversation and you love the way I work and I think I can really help you, I will then propose a deeper container, either my deepest dive or my 8-week comeback dive. Okay. So if you're wanting that, you can find that in my bio. You can find that in all my links. There's the one-off deep dive session for 1 hour together. These have been really fantastic and I found like really useful, and it's a great next step if you're wanting a really clear next step to support you in your journey. If you are just here to listen, thank you so much for being here. And I would love to know what landed for you. Like, what was the most truthful thing for you that you heard that you're like, yep, that was really helpful. I'm taking that away. You can let me know in the comments, or you can send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. All right, sweethearts. Good day. See you soon. And for those of you that are ready, I look forward to seeing you in those deep dives. All right, sweethearts. Bye.